is Senior Solutions Council on Aging for Southeastern Vermont, bringing you another segment of our interviews. And this time we are fortunate to have Charlie Degener from the Woodstock Town Office bringing us information about elections and voting. So Jim over here and me, Joanne, we will try our best to ask questions, and I know Charlie will give us wonderful answers and inform us so that you'll know more than you did when you first tuned in about how to vote here in Vermont.
Woodstock has 12 JPs. I think Chester probably must have 10 or 12. It's based upon the size of the population for each town. And the justices of the peace, many people think of them as wedding officiants, but that's really a small task that some of them perform. Their main task is to serve as an elections official. So between the town clerk and the justices of the peace, administer the elections for their particular community with oversight from the Vermont Secretary of State's office. So at this time of year, all the town clerks are especially busy processing absentee ballots. Vermont is very proactive in trying to get voter participation, and for many years has been promoting absentee voting. A couple of years ago with the pandemic and the difficulty of people getting to the polls, some emergency legislation was passed whereby absentee ballots were proactively mailed to every voter in the state with no request necessary. And the legislature has recently made that a permanent law. So every general election the state of Vermont has going forward, absentee ballots are mailed to everyone. So naturally that creates quite a bit of work for every town clerk. So we're getting in a lot of absentee ballots right now, and we're processing those.
Has that increased participation in voting?
It's hard to say. When we're done with this election, we'll have a little bit of a better idea. I was speaking with somebody in Oregon or Washington, I can't remember, and they implemented mail-in voting in the 90s, and they've been doing it for 20 or 30 years. Yes. And they didn't find that participation increased, but it does make it more easy for those who wish to participate. So I'm not quite sure what the numbers will be, but it certainly has the potential to increase participation.
So if I had an absentee ballot, which I have already turned in weeks ago, how late do I have to, when can I turn it in? When's the last minute?
Under Vermont law, you have the opportunity to return that ballot until 7 p.m. on election day. With that said, it's a little bit specific to your particular community. So when the town clerk's office closes before the election, that's the last opportunity you have to get it to the clerk's office, but you can bring it to the polling place on election day until the close of polls at 7 p.m. So for instance, in Woodstock, we're not open the day before an election, which many town clerks are closed that day to prepare for the election. So you can certainly bring it into our office anytime right up until the close of business before the election, which would be the Friday before the election. But on Tuesday, election day, you can bring it anytime right to the polls, and we'll receive it until 7 p.m. And that's true for any town in the state. So right up until 7 p.m., as long as it's received, it will be counted.
You know, one of the things that some of our elderly population has is sometimes with hearing, and they don't all have access for hearing aids and so forth. Sure. Because of the cost factor. Yep. Do you make any arrangements for people with that are deaf or with disabilities?
We do. Every town is provided with a well, it's sort of like a tablet computer that's an accessible voting system. And there are earphones that are available that you can use for that. It has push button screen technology, so you can zoom in, so the screen is quite large if you need to look at it. The intent is that any voter is able to use that without any assistance. But voters can certainly ask for assistance at any time at a polling location, and justices of the peace can help them if they need help reading the ballot or have questions. Also, disabled voters can certainly apply to the town clerk to have justices of the peace deliver ballots. And if the two justices of the peace who bring the ballot to the voter can certainly ask questions. And if they need help reading the ballot, they can assist in reading the ballot to the voter for them. So yes,
Yeah,
try to be proactive and provide as much assistance as the voter wishes to have.
well, the justice of the peace are an integral part of
They are.
support for you, no question about it, and ultimately supporting the people that they represent.
Yep.
And I think they're underrated as far as what,
They are.
the regular citizen know. Oh, justice of the peace, they just marry people.
Right.
No, it's a little bit more complicated than that.
It is.
So I guess we need to thank them for being so helpful.
Oh, yes.
We do.
So all you justices of the peace out there in Vermont, thank you very much. We all appreciate what you do. Now we know what you do.
Right. Right. All right, let's see. So you probably feel that you're going to have a pretty good turnout this year.
We expect so. Yeah.
Nationally, that looks like it's happening.
I think
All
so.
right. I'm glad we're here in Vermont rather than Georgia, but I think Vermont has been right up there, ranked right up there in the safest and most secure manner. I think
Yes.
I think we got we ranked #1 in 2016
Yep.
by MIT independent group that looked at that data. And so that's something that I know that the town clerks really feel is important and really represents the attitude we have here in Vermont. Whether
Right.
you're a Democrat, Republican, independent, we want to have everybody have access to the voting process.
Yes,
Great. Can I ask a question?
of course.
I didn't know that you could register right up until the time you vote.
You can. That law went into effect about maybe 5 or 6 years ago. So Vermont does have same-day voter registration. It's another law that makes things more complicated for elections officials, but
Of course.
that's just the nature of it. So yes, fear not if you're not on the voter checklist. You can go to your town clerk's office until they close, or right to the polls on election day, and you have the opportunity to register.
That's amazing.
Yep.
Not that so many people need to register, because pretty much, you're registered for life unless you change it. But that opportunity, especially for people who after COVID may have moved to Vermont,
Right.
and they don't know that, they may think, oh my gosh, I never registered. I'm not going to be able to vote. But if they listen to this program, they're going to know, no, don't worry. You can go anytime between now and when you go to vote on election day.
Yep. We'd certainly encourage you to come in sooner rather than later.
Absolutely.
Makes it simpler
Avoid the
for
rush.
everybody, but fear not if at 6:50 you realize that you've maybe not registered to vote and you want to register to vote, rush right down to the polls and you can get on the
Yeah.
checklist and vote.
It might-
Right, and part of that process is if when you do register, you have to take an oath. Is that correct?
Yes,
And that's people don't really read that and look at what it really says. I think they just do it. But
they do, and
it's
I've
very
got it right here. If
significant.
you, what used to be known as the Freeman's Oath,
That's
the Vermont
correct.
Voter's Oath states, do you solemnly swear or affirm that whenever you give your voter suffrage touching any matter that concerns the state of Vermont, you will do it so as in your conscience you shall judge will most conduce to the best good of the same as established by the Constitution without fear or favor of any persons.
I used to use the Freeman's Oath in my social studies class.
Mhm.
Well, let the kids really look at what this process is all about.
Yep.
Good. Thanks
It's
for reading that.
Yeah.
It's important that
yeah.
everybody has read that and thought about that.
It's important. It's simple, but important.
Yep.
Very important.
Yeah, very nice.
Yeah.
Very good. All right.
Anything else?
Yeah, what else can you tell us?
Well, I'm not sure.
Okay,
So we know that polling booth, the polling closes at,
Oh, sure. Yep, that's another, under Vermont law, every polling place in the state is open until 7 p.m. So the closing time for the polls across the board is 7 p.m. However, towns do have discretion as to when their polls open. I believe the earliest that you can open a polling place is between maybe 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, and the
Ooh,
latest is 10 o'clock. So for instance, Woodstock, we're open from 7 in the morning to 7 at night. Some towns don't open their polls until 8, 9, or 10. So you may want to check with your particular town to see when they open. They all open no later than 10 o'clock, and they all close promptly at 7.
one of the things that I've noted nationally, currently, you may have seen the same thing on the news, is that in some states, there are poll watchers dressed in camo with mask on and armed. And some people obviously think that is a form of intimidation. What are
Yeah.
Vermont rules on that?
You know, that's interesting. I think it's such a new development that we haven't heard too much about it. You know, in Vermont, we just try to have as transparent a polling location as possible. And we seldom have any kind of poll watchers, but we always welcome them and would encourage them. We have a certain spot where they'd be welcome to sit and see what's going on. But with that said, any member of the general public is welcome to come and observe the goings-ons, because we're not doing anything nefarious and everything is transparent. So
Absolutely.
we're happy to have anybody inspect any part of the process.
Right. Even if I'm running for a political office, I can be outside, maybe
can.
with a sign and so
Yep.
forth. I think that is usually really controlled.
It is.
Nobody really gets out of hand. I think Vermont's a little different than most states, all right?
We
yeah, and
we take it as the norm, but unfortunately, I don't think it is.
I agree, Charlie.
would be nice if we could set the example for other states, yeah. Oh, can I just tell a quick story? When I
Please,
first,
please.
Yeah.
when I first actually moved to Vermont and voted, I was in a small town, more of a rural community. And the first 2 elections that I voted in, I had to vote in a cow stall. It was wonderful. You know, the tray that held the hay
Yep,
was the desk that my paper ballot sat on so that I could fill it out, and then folded it up and put it in the wooden box.
Yep.
Yeah, and I thought, this is really cool. So now things have gotten a little bit more sophisticated,
A little bit, but
but it is a really charming memory.
So, Charlie, what is new for Woodstock? What are your plans going on now for the future of Woodstock? I know you're an integral leader of supporting all the values that Woodstock has always supported. Where are we headed in Woodstock?
well, we're just trying to maintain the good qualities that we have and build upon you know, future potential and that sort of thing. Election wise, I think voters will find that things are pretty similar. I think we may not have as crowded a polling location because we have so many absentee ballots that we process ahead of time.
True.
But I think we're trying to just maintain our high standards and keep going forward.
Well, you're certainly a part of that, Charlie. So we do thank you for your time and effort and your knowledge. And the way you present it is very understandable for all of us.
Well, thank you. We
Yeah, it's
try
you
to
make it, you
answer
demystify it.
questions.
Charlie, can I show you something?
Of course.
Do you see this?
Yes.
Do you, we got a delivery of maybe a dozen of these at our office. And I was wondering if perhaps the town offices received any copies of this? It's
I'm
a
not sure that
guide
we
for-
received that particular document, but we do have some other promotional information that's similar to that.
Okay, yeah, that's good. And if people, would like to understand if they have a disability or something,
Yeah.
it's really a great guide, easy to follow, and gives a lot of information. So if they wanted to stop by or call and ask about it, would you be able to provide that for them?
Certainly, and if any of the clerks don't have that specific guide, I'm sure they would be able to answer the questions regardless and walk any voter through the process and help them
Great.
understand what accommodations can be made and how to help things. For instance, in Woodstock, I expect other towns are the same. Some town offices have a large parking lot and it's easy to get in and out of the town hall, and some are right in the middle of the village and parking is more difficult. We're right in the middle of the village, and fortunately we don't vote during the height of foliage season, so it's not as congested, but it still can be difficult. But one of the accommodations we're always happy to make is the building, of course, is fully handicap accessible, and we have elevators and we have ramps, but sometimes people still find it difficult to come in, but they want to vote in person regardless. So we have the ability, people can park right in front of Town Hall in our handicap parking spot, and 2 justices of the peace will come out and they can check them off the checklist and hand them a ballot, and they can vote in their car and hand the ballot back to the 2 justices of the peace who bring the ballot in and feed it into the ballot box. And that's just a particular accommodation of Woodstock, and I'm sure any other town has other
Nice.
things that are specific to their town that they can, based on their location and how their polling place is laid out and what kind of availability they have of justices of the peace and that sort of thing. But I know all town clerks work to accommodate everyone as best as they can. So I'm sure I speak for everybody in that regard.
That's so nice. I think it's also nice that because of the size of our state and the size of our population, most of us actually know our justices of the peace.
Right.
So when we walk in and they check our name off, it's just a really nice community feeling because you know each other. It's not as anonymous as it is in larger communities. And I think that helps to support the community feeling and why we cooperate so much in this state, because we know each other. We're held accountable for our actions.
Right.
And I just want to encourage everybody out here in the listening area that Senior Solutions serves in Southeastern Vermont, that if there's any questions, they can call their town clerks and ask. And if they still have questions, go to our website or call our helpline at 802-885-2669. And did you want to give the phone number from the Woodstock Town office?
Sure. 457-3611. Feel free to call, even if you're not a Woodstock resident. We'd be happy to help you and answer your questions or point you in the right direction.
Well, we really appreciate you. I know you're busy this time of year, so I really appreciate you taking time for this interview. Do you have anything you'd like to conclude with? But we appreciate you, Charlie.
Yeah.
I'm sure after we close, I'll think of something that I wish I'd said, but at this point, it seems like we've covered most everything. So thank you.
Great.
Well, I remember Charlie in my class, and he was definitely one of the best historians that I ever taught. I learned a lot from him. So I want to thank you for that, Charlie. You were always
Thank you.
supportive.
Thanks again, Charlie. We do appreciate your time, and happy election day to
Thank
you.
you.
Bye now.
Bye now.